To meet you.
Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Hi, Derek.
Hey, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, good to see you again. Andrew, I think I heard you introducing yourself when I was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Ashton, I'm not sure if you had a chance to.
No, I just joined.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Derek. I'm also a supervisor in the support group, along with
Nice
Andrew.
to meet
Yep. So Ashton and Andrew both are supervising a number of our support engineers. And so they're the ones that are working on a lot of the technical tickets that customers are submitting. I thought to start off with, Derek, I don't know if you want to just do like a quick introduction of yourself, your experience.
you. Absolutely. Um, I primarily come from an infrastructure background. A lot of my work was rooted in many of the Windows 7 migrations here in the Twin Cities, such as Travelers Insurance, Department of Urban Development, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medico Products, manufacturing, insurance, Medica, pretty much all of the major top companies when it comes to like a lot of insurance. Um, I did a lot of their desktop support migrations for the first couple of years, of my career. Then I kind of got into working with Boston Scientific and Cargill Crew TCS, which is pretty much if uh, if you ever heard of TCS and Tata, anything that has to do with buying a burger or driving a car in India, they have something to do with it. So I did some managed service support for them, for a small amount of time. And then I ended up getting into Citrix administration for a managed service company called Syntax. So I started working with them, doing a lot of their frontline Citrix administration support. Um, I worked on their managed service division when it comes to a lot of the server infrastructure. Um, and then I started working as a Salesforce data analyst for a school called Hiawatha Academies. And that's when I started to kind of get a little bit of my Salesforce chops. That was the introduction to Salesforce for me, doing reports, working with Lightning, platform integration, and managing a lot of the data feeds. And from there, I took a contract. Well, there was a layoff, and they told us early 2020 we would be laid off. So once we got laid off, I took a contract for a medical imaging service provider, software as a service company called Flywheel, and I was over there learning, Docker and Kubernetes and supporting a lot of their software. The last few years, I've been dealing mainly from a system business analyst standpoint, dealing with Wells Fargo when it comes to their gateway project, and also Optum United Health Group. During the course of my time as a Citrix administrator for 7 years, I was also a technical instructor for the Minneapolis Park Board. So I got over 100 people certified in the networking certification program.
Awesome. Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Derek. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I think what I'm going to do is Andrew's got a couple like service questions.
Okay.
Ashton's got a couple, I think on the like technical side of things a little bit.
Okay.
Or am I putting you on the spot, Ash? I'm pretty. You have one. You have questions, right?
I've got a couple questions.
Okay. Whew. Well, you're gonna have to come up with some. No, I'm kidding. But I'll probably just start with just a quick refresher of who we are and kind of what the role would be. So Derek and I had already talked about it, but we are a software company. So our Aspen Tech is the company that we work with. We work with software that's under their digital grid management umbrella. The software that we work with was originally part of a privately held company called Open Systems International, who was acquired by Emerson and Aspen Tech in 2020. Uh, the bulk of what we work with is a type of software called SCADA software, so that's supervisory control and data acquisition. It is a type of software that is primarily used in the utility industry, particularly with the power grid. And our group, the technical support group, helps to, once those systems are up and in the field, to keep them up and in the field. So to make sure that customers, if they're having issues, that we get those resolved and help them kind of make sure they're getting the most out of their system and it's working well for them. We have a couple different roles in our group. This position is for the ops analyst. And so what our analysts do is one of the functions is the triaging. So for incoming calls and ticket submittals, our analysts help uh, intake, help with the prioritization and assessment, and then help get them to the support engineers for continued investigation. Um, the systems that we're supporting require nearly 100% uptime. They are critical infrastructure. Um, but they also help if something's escalating and the engineers need to bring more people in or look to see if we have additional experts that are available, help communicate when those things are happening. They also help, so that's kind of the primary function is that triage and escalation. There's also a number of business processes that we have to follow, um, including like working with project teams, working with sales, uh, to get, incoming systems, make sure that we know what they're doing. Um, any questions after my refresh? Any of that didn't make sense.
Um, not that I could think of right at the moment.
Okay, awesome. Andrew, do you want to start with some of your kind of more service-oriented questions?
Yeah, so Derek, first, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for that introduction. So in this position, you'll likely be sort of the first person a lot of customers are going to speak to when they call into Aspen Tech for support. So just with keeping that in mind, can you tell me or talk me through a time when you have worked with a tough customer and how
Yeah,
you might have handled that?
absolutely. When I was kind of leading the managed service division over there at Syntax, we dealt with some of the biggest government customers from the state of Minnesota to also a lot of manufacturing sites, which were critical production issues, dealing with some of the servers like ZenApp and ZenCenter and things of that nature. So I'm very much aware of making sure that a high severity incident, especially dealing with a lot of ITIL environments and things of that nature. I'm very much aware of, having a soft touch with a lot of this customer base. One thing that was interesting about that position is we weren't really dealing with users so much to say. Everybody that called in was likely a system administrator, so they pretty much knew how to speak the language of if they were talking about dealing with tracert or IP config and whatnot. So we had certain levels of service level agreements in which we had to adhere to. So we, being on the front end of that, I would be the one that would be taking those calls. It wouldn't really be from the major configuration when it comes to file redirection and actual implementation of the Citrix environment. But I had to be familiar with using different servers such as Server 2008, R2, 2012, 2016, and things of that nature, and being able to speak to the language of the severity of the problem. For example, you might have had some VMs that went down. I would have to go in there and run some performance benchmarks from time to time, and then I would have to communicate what the issue is to the other engineers. There was engineers that been there 10, 15 years that was far more seasoned than me. So I was the initial triage to take the phone calls, and then if it was a sales issue, I might get a sales engineer involved.
Sure. Yeah. And kind of like you mentioned, when you're dealing with customers, you're not always dealing with end users. A lot of times you are going to be talking to administrators, and there just can be sometimes just some differences with what the problem is being reported by the operations and what kind of how the administrator to interpret those problems. So it's kind of good to be able to to work with that. Can you talk me through a time when you had success with a customer?
Yeah, I could actually give you an example that happened during the direct call. One of our some of our managed service division will be kind of cut in two. So you have people that would have managed services for servers, and then eventually they got to the point where it was managed services for not just servers but also workspaces and the VMs and that such. There was a customer that called in, and one of the servers actually went down. So he took a lot of heat, and naturally he called us because we were the managed service provider for those Citrix and XenApp servers. The thing was, the plan that they selected did not cover some specific servers that they had. They had declined upon high availability on those specific servers. They didn't want those. But yet and still, they called in saying, well, hey, you were supposed to notify us with these nodes that were going down. And so I pretty much had to prove that these servers, in fact, were not part of the plan. They, we had, addressed that with them several different times. And I had to kind of go back into a lot of the tickets and even with the sales because they were trying to put that part, on our team, and we had asked them like, hey, these are some critical servers. Are you sure that you don't want these monitored? They said, well, we have our own monitoring systems, and they were using solar winds and things of that nature. So they declined on getting those systems, those servers monitored. So when it went back to the director of IT, um, they basically said, okay, uh, this is the issue that's on us. So we would like you to monitor those servers now. And so we went ahead and put AVG on there.
All right. And let's see, my next question is, tell me about a time when like you've been working with a customer or client and they asked you a question that you did not know the answer to. How do you
Uh,
handle that?
oh yeah, I actually had an issue where I was working at high watts academies, and somebody, the way that the system works is you have data feeds. I'm not sure if you guys got kids in school that have used something called Infinite Campus. Infinite Campus, Tableau, and Salesforce is pretty much the three-headed monster in which I was supporting as a data analyst. So Salesforce feeds all of the information, such as everything from Infinite Campus. That feeds all the information into Salesforce, and you'd have all these different workflows. So somebody might come and say, "Hey, I want to report on X amount of students with this amount of grades, and this person living in this neighborhood, and how much money do they make?" Um, Now, it came to a point also, there was another third party piece of software that was integrated into the Salesforce, in which, for example, we're doing an interview right now. This software would make it to where you guys don't have to sit on the panel with me. They would send a link and say, all right, they'll ask their certain amount of questions. These questions could range from pretty much everything, kind of like we're covering today. And but you don't have to be live on the call. You could just review me talking as I am right now. So they wanted some modifications. One of the customers wanted, which was, the network team, not the network engineering team, but they call a network team of, principals, teachers, and people that, it might be somebody that, works with the gym or something like that. It could be a coordinator. It could be a therapist. We even had a nurse on staff. They say, well, hey, can you make these modifications to this HR system? Now that was on a managed service platform as well. So they only it's not like an all you can eat buffet. There's certain things that they can get. But what I did is I went and I put together a meeting with the project managers. We have been a long time customer and said, hey, I know that this will be a customized um, a customized implementation for what they want, but is there any other things that we can do that's within our program? And they obliged to it. They went ahead and did it because it wasn't a major modification to their program. And that made the customer base happy.
So in this situation, you didn't know the answer, but you had brought in the people needed to
Right.
determine if this was something that you could do. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's
Leveraging, relationships among the network.
mm-hmm, for sure. That's awesome. I got one more for you. Tell me about a time when you're juggling multiple projects at once. How do you prioritize?
Well, with me being in a lot of large corporate enterprise, most of the environments that I had, they were pretty strict service level agreements. I also dealt with a lot of Scrum and Agile environments as well. So uh, if I get a ticket where it's anywhere between 10 to 15, 20, 30 people down, naturally that's a severity one. If somebody calls up and says, well, I don't like the color of my mouse, well, that's not going to be a severity one. That's probably going to be like a severity four or severity five. So I might have to, tell the customer, hey, let me take a look in asset management and see what we got. But, is it okay if I give you a call later?
Sure. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, that's all I have.
Yeah, I have just like a two-part question.
Okay.
Can you think of a time that you, either like you yourself, experienced maybe bad customer service, and what about that made it bad?
I think, I've been a lifelong customer of T-Mobile, and there was a few times where um, I got on the phone and they wanted to sell me some stuff pretty much once they get my phone number, and they started to sell me stuff before really addressing the issue at hand. Hey, we got this new iPhone. Let me tell you about this new iPhone 16 and this iPhone 17. And I'm like, well, I have an issue that I want to resolve just first. So it was more of a, for that representative, maybe a lack of active listening skills.
Mm-hmm. Good. And then this one's usually the tougher one, so we'll see. Can you think of a time that you experienced good customer service and what made it good?
Well, I use Xfinity. What I like about them is not only are they're really responsive, but I've noticed over the years that they've spent a considerable amount of time augmenting their mobile apps. So now I could reboot my
Mm,
router without having to call them up. I mean, there's a lot of different things I can do without ever having to call them up whatsoever. And with me having a technical background, I rarely call unless it's a question about a bill and whatnot. But a lot of these things can be resolved just by going in that app. And what I appreciate about it is they spent. I've noticed over the years that it's gotten better and better. Which even though the price is heftier than I want to pay, I'm very reluctant to leave.
but it, I when I so I don't have internet through Comcast or Xfinity anymore, but when I did, and often it has quite a reputation, I actually really never had that many bad experiences with them. Whenever I had an issue, they're actually pretty responsive and stuff.
Yeah,
Same. I use the
Yeah.
app too, Derek.
yeah. I use the app. I don't even call them. My wife is
It's
like, "Hey, let's
nice.
get them on the
Yep.
phone." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not calling them. I'll reboot."
I
Last I was working remote, so there was some issues of last year, but I think that was outside of their that they were working on fiber or something like that, so that didn't have nothing to do with them. But every time I look up, it seems my VPN was bouncing, and it was happening a lot last year. But they were doing construction work, so I'm not gonna
Mhm.
blame that on them. I mean, you're digging up 6, 7 feet of Jurassic Park rock. I mean, it, you know, that's okay. I can roll with it.
So I guess I just have a quick question. Do you currently work remotely?
I do. I do.
Okay. And
I've
how
been
do you
working
feel?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, how do you feel about coming into the office for 3 days a week,
That's something that I'm open to.
specifically Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday?
Specifically Tuesday. Yeah,
Hmm.
we do have a 3-2 policy. And so Mondays and Fridays are optional. You can both Ashton and Andrew today are working from home. I actually come into the office because I don't have internet through Comcast. I have internet through T-Mobile, and so I tend to like to work in the building because it's faster.
Okay.
But just for reference, significantly cheaper. So it's a trade-off. Um, but anyway, yes, we
T-Mobile
do have a 3-2
5G.
policy. Um, I think so. Yeah, I just got the little home internet box. I think it's like $30 a month.
Oh, that is
Not too
pretty
bad.
cheap. I
But
just got a lot of nodes
it's
in the
not.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not for you have to be kind of ready for like some sluggish moments.
Okay.
But
Okay.
for $30 a month, I'm like, yep, that's fine. That's why I come into the office. Um, Sorry, I just got a little distracted. Ashton, Europe.
Hi, Derek. So, one question I had was that from reviewing your resume and hearing from you today, it sounds like you've done a lot of work with things like workstation and Windows migrations, working with like API functionalities, and working with code management software. For this position, you'll likely be getting very familiarized with several of our products to help triage and delegate where we might need to take issues and who would be best to manage those. One question I had was, how in depth have you gone into the technical aspects of your previous roles? I guess overall, like, have there been more high level understandings of these aspects? Have you done like network level configuration or configurations of files and processes? Have you done any code? Or have you had experience changing code before? Can
I
you
have
speak a little
not
bit more
had
on that?
experience getting, creating and developing code, but when I was at Flywheel, we deal with things like Terraform and Python. So you might have to go and change, for example, let's say somebody says, "Hey, I want to um, add more memory or add uh, space." You can do like a KC get something and KC kubecutter. It's kind of like the Star Trek board, and then you go into the YAML file and say, "Hey, I want to add more space um, to the YAML files." So with that environment, Kubernetes is pretty much a whole nother system. It's containerized, um, and then you're going to deal with some virtualization. Your storage, of course, is going to be in the cloud, but when you're making changes, you're kind of making changes on the fly. So it's not like doing a uninstall and then dropping it in the trash. You're actually going out there to the command line and you're making these modifications. KC get files. You might add a tail. Primarily, it will be in Linux. So, um, in that aspect, uh, dealing with Python, uh, yes. But now, if you were to tell me create a screensaver, that's not happening. I haven't done that before. Now, the other part of your question where you're saying in terms of processes, when I was a data analyst at High Watch Academies, it was a lot more process, not so much break fix when it comes to infrastructure systems. The only reason why I was able to resolve a lot of issues as far as their hardware, software issues, they had a managed service company for that. I wasn't IT at all. Anything that came up on my desk in terms of IT, password reset, router, I mean, literally anything, I could have just said, "Hey, call IT." I didn't do that because I had a sysadmin background. So if they have an active directory question or something like that, and they say, "Well, trees and forests," I could articulate that. A lot of the times they didn't have to go to the managed IT because I come from a desktop help desk sysadmin background. So I was kind of the liaison. So they would send me if there was a question about something technical, they could get me on the phone because they don't. A lot of times they didn't know what to say or what to ask. So I kind of saved IT a trip as well because if they just tell me what needs to be done, I can just go do it. But that wasn't my role. My role was mainly to make do the break fix and work with the data team. So I was the data system analyst, making sure the Salesforce was up and running, making sure if there was some modifications or any customization requests. If somebody wants a report, I could spin out a report from Salesforce. If there were some workflows that need to be changed, that's another conversation with our Salesforce account executive because we had Infinite Campus, we had Tableau, and we have 3 to 4 different third-party places that all feed into Salesforce. So you don't want to go messing around with the data feeds if you don't have to, unless there's a need. But now when it came to my system administration and desktop support, that was going a deep dive because you're doing support. But as my career kind of went on, as like doing data system analysis and business system analysis and things of that nature, it kind of got away from directly, "Hey, my mouse is purple and there was a wild turkey that ran in the background and now my camera's not working." I wasn't taking calls like that anymore. It was more like, you know, um, somebody might want to change in the process, or like, Wells Fargo working with the Gateway team. I have a $5 million house. Can I use this API software developers are calling me now saying, "Hey, can I use this API for this? This is a payment integration question I have. Okay, let's work with the Treasury Department. Things like that."
Gotcha. Yeah, and in this position, you probably won't really have to be changing Python YAML files as much, but knowing that you have that background, it will definitely will be assisting you when you're, if you're, to be chosen going into this role. One other question I had too, and this is less technical. Uh, I saw that in your resume, and you touched on this too, with having been laid off from one of your positions and doing contract work.
Mhm.
Could you elaborate more on some of the other positions where it seems as though you might not have spent very long periods in past positions?
Yeah,
Um, Speaking on that, your intention is to look for a long-term role, so I just want to
right.
know if you could speak more on that.
Yeah, okay. So the first part of my career, 2012 to 2015, and I'll go over my resume as I go. Those were pretty much all contracts. Um, and the same thing, with TCS. Now, when I was a citrus administrator, I was there over 2 years. That was perm. Um, that was eventually a layoff. And in Hiawatha Academies, our charter schools are, half the team got laid off. So I decided to go and take a contract, with Flywheel, and I completed that. And then the rest of the positions, such as with Wells Fargo and Optum, those were contracts, and those got completed. And when it comes to my technical instruction, there was no gaps. So there's really technically no gaps. I was working as a technical instructor from January 2016 to September 2022. So when I was certifying students, bringing them out to the data center in Edina, Minnesota, getting their resumes together for Robert Half and Tech Systems and things of that nature. All of those people that got certified in that class that I was teaching, a lot of those people right now are working in positions that are similar to this, or in cybersecurity, or help desk, or desktop support. So there's actually really no gaps that I had in that manner.
Okay, thank you for the additional background on that.
Oh, no problem.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I just wanted to ask a little bit about, you know, I know you're looking for a long-time position.
Mhm.
Where do you see yourself in like 5, 10 years, or what do you kind of want to be doing or looking for?
I'm kind of thinking or leaning more towards, like the business analysis, business system analysis, and like product owner. They call them product managers sometimes, but product owner, product
Mhm.
managers, a distinction without a difference. Kind of going into that realm.
Okay. Um, you and I talked quite a bit, so I'm probably good on quite a few of my questions. Do you have any questions for us?
I do. I didn't get to finish the question that Mr. Erickson asked about my with the hybrid role thing.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, so yeah, I've been working remote primarily, but I don't have an issue with coming on site. Now you guys said that it's you said Mondays and Fridays people work remote.
Yep, you have the option to. Yep.
Okay, what
So it'd be
shift do you
Tuesday,
guys?
Wednesday, Thursday in the office.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay. What is the typical hours of the position, and what are the kind of the typical calls that you would probably field?
Yeah. So our business hours are 8 to 5
Okay.
Central Time. We staff a 24/7 critical line, but that is staffed through the engineering team, so that wouldn't necessarily impact your role. The types of calls that you would be taking, the the kind of the funny thing about our customers, as they are admins and fairly experienced, is we see quite a bit more of a ticket submittal. And so for a call volume, it's actually not as high as one might think with the number of tickets and customers that we work with. But the types of calls we get can be somebody is calling in because they got locked out of and can't figure out how to reset their password to our ticketing system. They have to log in to do that. Um, you can also get calls where somebody is reporting an issue with the software. So that might be, I'm missing this icon from our like login page for our products. And it can go all the my system's down, it is like nothing's responding. And what it looks like in that or in the analyst position on those calls, it's a lot of making sure that we have information like confirming who's on the phone is part of it.
Mhm.
And then two is it doesn't happen quite as much with the urgent items or critical items. Usually with that, I kind of get a pretty straightforward description of what's happening, and we usually try to get it to the engineers right away just because of the timelines. But with a non-urgent, I usually encourage or help our analysts ask questions like, what troubleshooting have you done? And the more you get into the software, the more you know or will kind of have a series of questions that you'll be comfortable asking.
Okay.
And the analysts can often help let the customer know what kind of data they should get ready or work on uploading so that when the engineers look at the tickets, the data is already there so we can save a little bit of time.
Okay. So, uh, kind of being like a liaison in between the customer
Yeah.
and um, the engineer.
Yep. Yep. So I was like before the job was called an analyst. It was when I started here, it was called a coordinator. So that's what I did for a really long time here. And when I was more comfortable with the products and got more exposure to them, I would usually ask questions about like, have you tried restarting the process? Have you rebooted your machine? Not necessarily that they need to do it while I'm on the phone with them, but just trying to understand the things that they've tried so that it's kind of in there and captured in the ticket. And that way, like if Ashton got the ticket, he would kind of already have those things and be able to give them a more productive response.
Okay. What would you say, being into proprietary environment? What if someone could speak to um, what are the pain points? I would say of coming into this environment and learning it, and what would you guys like to see far as changes in any processes or standards?
Great question. Do either of you guys want to take it?
Well, I mean, like you said, it's proprietary, so it's not our software processes and everything involved in it isn't something that you're going to really come into with experience. So it is a lot of new information that you're going to be learning.
Okay. So is there like is it more so of a knowledge base or more of it, or is it tacit
So we
learning where
do
you're
have Yeah, we do have like kind of a repository of knowledge base articles that people can use. Um, but it is quite a bit of like we have, kind of guidance or training on things. And then there is quite a bit of like kind of hands-on learning, whether that's with the products or with the process, like our business processes and things like that. So for like escalating something to development, like we have a process that we use. But when you're doing the escalations and stuff, where even though we're a large company, we also feel very small. So there is quite a bit of like trying to like reach out to those like development managers directly and see if they've had a chance to look or scheduling meetings to try to help make sure people are like um, on the same page about what a problem is, things like that.
okay. Um,
I know that part of your question was like, what kind of change would I like to see or would we like to see? Um, I think so. As a company, we've grown very fast. I think both in our products and technology that the products are using, and as a just an organization in general. And so when you grow really fast, documentation, processes, trainings, those often are a little bit laggy. So there is usually quite a bit of kind of learning on the fly more than I would want. And ideally, we can get into a place where, um, we're able to, or when we have newer hires or experiencing some, when people are troubleshooting products they haven't worked with, I would love to have that, have like very, very defined troubleshooting processes. It'll always be a challenge for us to be able to do that though, because of the nature of our software. It is intended to be very, like it works on different OSs, it scales differently, it can accommodate a lot of different design. And so at that point, there's enough variety that can be Derek, are you frozen?
Yeah, there was a freeze or something. I don't know. My Wi-Fi looks
Yeah,
like it's
Yeah,
dead.
you're
you're
back.
good now.
You're back. You're
Okay.
back.
Yeah, I thought it was
I
a
can repeat
poltergeist at
anything if
first.
you
I was
didn't
getting
hear
afraid.
it.
So Blumhouse hasn't made a new movie yet. So wait a minute, what's going on? I hope there's some Game of Thrones fans here on the line.
Yeah, I've watched it.
Mhm,
Okay, okay.
mhm, yep,
Um,
yeah. We are a technical support group, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of that.
okay, okay.
Pretty big in the
I'm
group.
trying to think of. There was another question I had right between when we got froze. Um, can you guys? Oh, and this was a question for Mr. Erickson and Ashton. Um, what were some of the things that really highlighted you about like my technical proficiencies and my experiences on my resume?
Um, I think some of the things that stood out to me is just it sounds like you've had a lot of interaction with customers, and you know having that experience does go a long ways. Making sure that the customer understands you. Um, it's good to have that experience to be able to know to make sure you and the customer are on the same page, having them repeat things back to you. I guess I didn't ask if that was some of the things that you do, but I imagine that those are some of the things you pick up on with all these years of customer service experience. So that does go a long ways in the position that you're applying for.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, and I was going to add, from the technical side, the amount of software that you've worked with before is going to be definitely beneficial because of the amount of variety of experience. Software is kind of like that. Everything is quite a bit different from each other, so it'd be really beneficial.
Yeah, we
okay.
have a lot of products. And I mean, most systems that we're supporting have quite a few of those. Um, but I think even some of the small systems will have like 60 or 70 of our products, and some of the biggest are going to be close to, or they're going to be over 150.
Oh
Yeah,
wow!
and some
So
other things oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was
There's a
gonna say
lot of
that. So
products.
so you could have a bunch of products you sell on one customer.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yep. They're going to, so it's a little bit easier to think of them as kind of suites of products. Each suite has a cluster of products that make it up. It doesn't all, a customer doesn't need to have every product in the suite, and they don't have to have all suites. There are some that you have like system and kind of the base suite things that they're going to have. But yeah, we have a ton of products to solve and provide various types of functionality that a customer may have or need to have.
Okay,
They're
okay.
fairly complex systems that we're supporting. Yeah.
Yep, and one thing I also noticed on your resume is, I know we have our proprietary software, but guess what? It runs on Windows machines, and you've had
Yeah.
experience there.
Yeah.
And I see Active Directory in your resume. Guess what? Active Directory is sort of integrated within our software as well in some areas, so that's
Okay. And do
helpful.
you guys use a lot of group policy management?
So one thing to clarify, we're really not hosting any of those systems. There is quite a bit of that on the system itself, but when we're working with them, it's a lot of, we might get to remote into them, but other than that, they're all local.
Okay. Okay. I guess my last question is, what is you guys' work style and autonomy, and if you could kind of speak to the culture of the workplace.
I'll let you guys do that first.
Let's see here. We were a privately held company, and like Corey said earlier, we are now a big company, but it's very much still sort of the small company values at the office. I would say that you get to know a lot of people. You'll be emailing people, messaging people. Um, you'll get to know a lot of people around that you're going to be working with from different departments. And it's really kind of a relaxed environment, I would say. I mean, we still have sort of your business casual type of environment that we want to adhere to as far as like professionalism goes, but it's relaxed.
Okay.
Ashton?
Yeah, that I think Andrew summarized it pretty well.
Okay.
Overall, like Andrew said, there's a lot of group interactions, but as well as like for the engineers, they usually have their own workloads that are specific to them, and there is cross collaboration with all different groups. So it there's a lot of different interactions, especially for us in support with the different groups. But we also have our own group dynamics as well that are pretty representative of small company values. So
Okay.
Yeah, we're really big on, it's a very big team environment. With the number of products we're talking and the fact that they're proprietary, uh, you can work here for 20 years and still have things you need to learn, and run past people and stuff like that. And so no one's going to know everything. And we do a lot of collective work. So a lot of, like Ashton has a suite that he knows and kind of, I don't know, specializes in, but knows very well. And so if there are tickets that regarding or tickets about those products that people need help with, Ashton is one of the first ones that they'll run things by, before contacting people outside of the group. For the analysts, you'll be, it's a lot of team environment because you're working with the engineers about like checking in on, hey, can I send you this ticket, things like that. And then actually the analysts do the most like intra department work where they're talking to other groups. So interacting with our delivery group a lot about, we have business processes about moving new customers into support from delivery, making sure that they've done all the things they're supposed to do so that we're ready to intake them. And yeah, they also have the analysts do the most like interacting across all of the customers
Okay.
regularly.
So you guys get to see, for example, if there's like some big cybersecurity threat on the grid or something, you guys kind of get a heads up to kind of see what's going on.
Yes, but hopefully never, right?
Yeah.
So an example of, like it didn't really impact us that much because one, our customers, most of them weren't running it on their production systems, but like the CrowdStrike event from a couple
Oh,
months
okay.
ago. So, um, in scenarios like that, like a third party product that may be having issues or having a vulnerability that could be on the same hardware or systems that our software is installed on. We're often making sure that we're communicating out to customers about, hey, um, you know, take this into consideration, or for the few that did have or were impacted by a crowd strike, we did get questions and ask for help when they were working to like get the systems back up and connecting properly when they were restored. But yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think one last question. What do the next step look like in this process
Yeah.
here?
So after we're done here, we'll chat. Again, we'll connect with Wendell, and Wendell will reach out to you with kind of our decision.
Okay. Okay. All right. I can't
All right.
think of any other. I think a lot of the technical questions that I had before, I think I had already asked you
Okay.
those, so I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the time today, Derek. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I
Yep.
appreciate you all. Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Have
everybody. Have a
have a
good
good
Take
day.
care.
weekend.
Y'all
Take care.
take care.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. So we got another one coming up soon here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this together for you guys. Uh, I might do a breakdown of this later on. Um, we'll talk later.